You're not required to.
You're not? Okay.
No, you're not required to. We'll get to that, but I highly recommend it. It doesn't matter whether there's somebody there or not.
Okay.
It has to be, you have to carry the system for 48 hours. It's not like a fire watch, if you're familiar with
That's
that.
what I was kind of thinking.
Yeah, no, it's not like a fire watch. So fire watch is if your alarm system or your fire alarm goes down, a lot of counties are required to have someone there maintaining a watch on the premises so that if the fire breaks out, they can call the fire department, right? It's called a fire watch. That's not the case here. This is security, so it's totally different.
You said you need a bank of batteries or what?
A generator.
Generator.
Yep. You can need a bank of batteries or generator. Yes, sir.
In the quad, you can also have a security backup system.
In the what?
The server and everything else can be in the
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, no, it can't be in the vault. No.
Evan, can you repeat the question so we can hear it better?
Yeah, the gentleman asked whether, if I'm understanding you correctly, whether the IT system can be in the vault. No. There's nothing can be in the vault but product, basically. Okay, there can't be anything else in there. You can't have IT equipment in there. You can't have money in there. You can't mix and...
Money.
It's,
Money, y'all.
so your security vault should only contain product. But anyway, bottom line is you need to have a separate IT room. Okay. It's okay if it's a closet, it doesn't matter. But that closet has to be protected with a security door, it's got to have an access control system, and it's got to have a separate alarm system. And it has to be sufficiently cooled to keep all the stuff in there. Because you don't want the thing overheating, right? Okay, so video requirements. A licensee shall maintain a motion controlled video surveillance system on the premises, records activity images in high quality and high resolution capable of clearly revealing facial detail. Initially, when they came out with this regulation, it said that it had to have facial recognition capability. Okay? We saw this in the security industry, it means something totally different. They meant that you should need to be able to recognize faces, not facial recognition. Okay, facial recognition basically is a bank of faces that when you walk into a place like an airport or so on and so forth, it checks your face against a terrorist list or what have you. You're talking about millions of dollars, okay? So we had to clear that with the state. So if you ever see that on any state licensure stuff where it says it needs to have facial recognition, it just means you need to be able to recognize faces, okay? In operation 24 hours, 365 days a week, it can never go down. Okay? If it goes down, you need to call your company immediately and have them come out and fix it. A lot of stuff can be fixed remotely. Okay? We can fix a lot of stuff remotely. But, yes, and I'll get to that in a second. Yes, sir.
Now, how far going back do you want this? A month, 2 months, 3 months, a year?
We'll get to that. I promise. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Are there individual county regulations that either trump some of these or add significantly to what's required?
No.
The question was, restate, please?
Yeah. Are there any county regulations that trump the state regulations? The
Or
answer
add
is no.
to.
Now, we're not talking about fire alarms or burglar alarms. We're talking about video requirements. Okay, so
Well, alarms too. I mean,
well, your county, right? So your county fire marshal is going to be the guy that's in charge of, and each county for your fire alarm system. Okay, so we don't really mess with fire alarms. That's not really our thing. But there's certainly from county to county, there are wildly different fire regulations. Okay, so for instance, and sometimes they interfere with your security regulations. So I'll give you an example. We put in an access control system into a place where they had what's called a PIR, passive infrared release for the door. So when you walk in front of it, the door releases, okay, the mag lock. We had a push button release, okay, but that wasn't enough. So the fire marshal came in there, even though it meets state regulations, the fire marshal came in there and said, I want this, it has to be a push button release, you also have to have a turnkey release, and the thing has to be ADA compliant, it has to drop to a certain level. So, it's not a big deal, but it's stuff that now the next county over didn't have that regulation. So, therefore you can get kind of caught up in that, but that doesn't really equate to MMCC per se. Any other questions? Okay. You say, did you want to say something now?
No.
Oh, okay. So, give me 1 second here. Oh, it has to have a date and time stamp on every recorded frame. The licensee shall post appropriate notices regarding recording devices. You have to put a notice up everywhere, basically, in the public area that you're being recorded. That's required. A surveillance camera has to be located to capture every activity on each entry and exit point. There has to be a camera at each entry and exit point, okay, both outside and inside, okay? There also has to be a camera with complete surveillance. When I say complete surveillance, it can't be 90 degrees, it can't be blocked, it can't be obstructed by anything of any area that contains cannabis, okay? And throughout the entire controlled area, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. It's also a good idea, obviously, to put it everywhere. So, I mean, if you're going to do it, you know, do it right. And that's one thing I'll go over in a little bit. So, you do have to have off-site recording, okay? Your on-site recording has to be 60 days at last regulation. Your off-site is 30 days, I believe. Okay? Yes, sir.
So you just, when you're talking about recordings, it's just visual, not audio?
It's visual, not audio. You're not required to have audio. Okay, so there are off-site recording companies that we use to offload your video. Okay? In other words, they store them off-site at a separate location. Okay? Now, having said that, understand that don't go cheap on your internet service. Okay? Because sending video, which we batch at night to online servers, will eat up bandwidth. Okay? Questions? Yes, ma'am.
The audio part, I've seen, of course, the signs that say under video surveillance.
Mhm.
Is it, do they have to say if it's also accompanied with audio?
Yes.
And if they do not?
Then it's a wire. It can be considered a wiretap violation. The other problem is it's a HIPAA violation. So you got to be very careful.
Yeah, they do, right?
So there's a wiretap violation in the state of Maryland. It basically says that it's not a two-party recording state. In other words, federal law only requires, excuse me, it is a two-party recording state. It's not a one-party. So federal law only requires a one-party know that they're being recorded on a telephone call or in person. Maryland states that everybody has to know that they're being recorded. Okay, that's why the police, when they walk up to your car, they say, hey, just to let you know you're being recorded on the video. Okay, because it's a wiretap violation. Okay, and that's a felony in the state. Okay, so don't record people without their knowledge. Not good. Okay, now this doesn't apply to areas that are, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. So in public areas this doesn't apply. If there's other people around, it doesn't apply. But it does apply where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy. Yes, ma'am.
So I had a question. Do you only have to notify, like, via like a posting, or do they also have to sign too?
They just have to be, they just have to
Just
be-
a metal sign.
Just a metal plastic sign up.
Okay.
You know, whatever. And we've been to places that didn't post the stuff during inspection, and they literally wrote recording, you know, video recording in progress with on a piece of paper and stuck it to the wall. And, you know, that meets the requirements for the inspection. Okay, for
So for
inspection
audio
purposes.
recording?
Audio recording has to be posted too, yeah.
Right, but they don't have to sign anything, just a posting?
They don't have to sign it.
Okay.
Now, you know, look, that's interpreted, you know, that can be interpreted in civil litigation. So, I mean, you know, if you want people to sign it, that's entirely up to you, but it's not a requirement. You just have to know that they're being recorded.
Okay.
Okay. The surveillance system has to be access limited. That's why I told you. It has to be in an IT room or a secure area. Okay, you can't have like a security system sitting on top of your desk if your office is accessible to off-site person. Secure by an alarm system that is independent of the main premises. Remember we talked about that, right? in a format that can be easily accessed for investigation purposes and retained for a minimum of 30 calendar days. And we already talked about that, right? So any recording of security and surveillance shall be made available to the commissioner or any law enforcement agency at their request. Okay, that means if there's a robbery in your establishment, if the MMCC wants to come in and just look at your stuff, they don't need a warrant. Or the police, they don't need a warrant. Okay, they can go and start pulling your video immediately. If you're like, wait a second, you can't pull it, you need a warrant, they'd be like, no problem, we're going to pull your license. Okay? I'm not saying they will, but they could. Okay? So, yeah. So area requirements. A licensee shall divide the premises into two separate areas. One's a public zone, one's an operational zone. The public zone shall have a waiting area open to the general public and a service area which shall qualify parties or a caregiver for consultation. So obviously when someone walks in, they have to have a card, so on and so forth. Okay, they can't just walk. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I'm sorry.
Huh?
That's too small for us to read.
I understand.
And I'm dependent on reading your lips. So when
Okay.
can you read it off the screen there?
I can,
So that I can
I
read
can
through
try
it?
to do that. It's very small on the screen.
Yeah. Kind of, it's been really hard. Oh, there you go.
No one here is blind for dispensary.
It all applies the same thing. It all applies to grows and process.
So you have a waiting room in your grow facility, backup.
You have to have a reception area. You have to have a reception area.
You could have family members come up because of an emergency or somebody applying for an application.
Yeah, so the question was, we keep talking about a dispensary, and this lady wanted to know whether it applies to grows or whatever. You do have to have a reception area. You have to be able to card people when they come in. Okay, and that's what we're talking about in this, going down this list here. Okay, so having said that, I'll stand over here. This might be better, easier for you guys.
I'll give her a copy.
Okay. So a waiting area open to the general public. So if let's say you have visitors, okay, in your dispensary or what have you, or excuse me, in your grower or processor, they come in. They have to identify themselves. They have to sign in. Okay. Typically, they use an automated sign-in system where they present an ID. They scan the ID. The ID goes into your system locally. Okay, and that person has to be escorted throughout the facility. Okay, so don't think just because you have a dispensary or excuse me, just because you have a grow or a processor that people aren't going to show up. I mean, you're going to have people coming in there, you know, obviously to sell you things. Okay, in terms of smocks for your personnel, clothing. I mean, it's never ending. Okay, so and then you have to have people that are coming in to do pickups, transportation, cash management. You know, everybody understand where I'm coming from? Okay. So an operational zone is different. Okay, so an operational zone is where all the drugs are being contained. Where it says here, temporary evident logbooks or electric identification logs shall be used for the movement of persons to and from the operational zone. Okay, so that comes to access control systems, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so right now I'm just reading you the regulations. All right, we'll get into more about what these systems do and how they interact and stuff like that. Okay. So an operational zone is any place that houses medical cannabis, obviously. So visitor requirements, this is basically what we were just talking about. Okay, so when a visitor is admitted to a non-public area of the premises, the logbook will be logged the visitor in and out. You're going to retain the logbook, a photocopy of the government-issued ID of the person. They have to have a driver's license, okay, or another type of government ID. They can't enter your property without it. They have to be continuously visually supervised by the visitor on the premises while they're on the premises. So you have to have somebody escort them around. Ensure the visitor does not touch any medical cannabis. Okay, they can't come through and start handling plants or start handling stuff that's in process. Okay, obviously. Okay, and the licensee shall maintain a log for not less than 2 years. Okay. Can it be a written log? Yes, it can be. Okay, it can be a written log. You don't have to get high tech with it. I recommend you go high tech because that way logs don't get lost and so on and so forth. Okay. So we got a couple video equipment tips. Okay, 4 to 6 megapixel video cameras on all interior cameras. All right, is what I recommend. 130 degrees. Remember, the larger the megapixels, the more zoom you're going to get. The more digital zoom you're going to get. Okay, so if you're looking at a surveillance picture, whether it's live or recorded, doesn't matter. Okay, whether it's live or recorded, and you want to zoom in on a specific portion of that picture to detect whether theft is occurring or what have you, the larger your megapixels on that image, the more you're going to be able to digitally zoom into that with clarity. Does that make sense to everybody?
So some stuff in their pockets with weed, you'll be able to zoom right in on it.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the issues that I have with my security person is I wasn't sure whether you should show exhibits of your equipment in the application. So is it permissible to show an example?
We'll get. I'll get to that. I promise. I'll get to
So-
that. The answer is yes, but I'll get to that.
Who here, is anybody here planning on an outside grow?
That includes greenhouses.
No, I'm talking about field outside growing.
Thinking of.
Okay, only because, Evan, you might want to, like, when you talk about cameras and that, talk about the difference between external building and then, field growing.
Yep. Get to that next. So exterior cameras shall be autonomous with sufficient zoom and movement tracking. Okay, so when I say autonomous, they have to have scan capability. Okay, so they have to be able to move independently of each other. It's called a PTZ, pan tilt zoom. I mean, you've all seen, you know what I'm talking about, right? You want to get a high megapixel camera for that. You want to have it on scan modes. When we're talking about outdoor grows, understand outdoor grows have to have constant video surveillance. So just like the inside. The problem is with outside is it's subject to the elements, obviously, and you've got usually a much larger space to contain. So you have to have still cameras, or stationary cameras, plus PTZs.
And it also requires, I believe, an 8-foot fence with
Perimeter.
some type of barbed wire across the top.
Yeah.
Razor wire, barbed wire across the top.
So let's talk about the difference. Well, CAT cable, also known as IEEE 802.3, is a standard for transmitting for Ethernet cable. And the way Ethernet systems work in terms of cameras is that they're more or less plug and play. They're a lot more complicated than a coaxial system. So you know the old security cameras used to have this coax wire that goes to them, right? Well, that's all what's called analog transmission. The new security cameras is all IT. Okay, so all that information travels digitally over the IT line. All right. The biggest thing with this is that IT cameras, you can only run an IT line for 100 meters, or 328 feet. Okay. So after 328 feet, it'll stop transmitting. Okay, and that's per international code, because it'll run too hot and catch fire to things. Okay. So yes, sir.
Repeaters?
You can use a repeater, but the thing, or a switch, okay?
I mean, electrician.
No, yeah, you can use a switch, yeah, absolutely. You can use, so what he's asking is, let's say you've got 20 cameras in a particular area, and you've got to run all the way across, and you've got a big warehouse, and you've got to run all the way across, like, you know, 300, 400, 500 yards somewhere else, okay? If you have a huge warehouse or whatever it is, okay? Well, you can have those 20 cameras in one section, go into an IT switch, and then you can take a, I'm having a brain problem. You can take a cable going from the switch to your main switch, okay? And we'll talk about that more in a second, okay? So,
Hey, Evan, could I just interject?
yeah.
When you are writing, some of you will write your own security, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can call, get a consultant or do it yourself. A lot have done it themselves and had no problem with it. Just make sure when you write in your application what you're going to do, make sure you're doing that. We had one group that had written in they were going to have a outdoor camera for an outdoor grow every 10 feet. Well, it was going to be 7-acre grow, I believe is what it was. You would need a sewer pipe, probably 6 or 8 foot high, to run all the cable through it. So, you know, if you don't know, just do some research on it because it can save you a lot of headaches in the long run. Yes.
So then on that issue, you can run Cat 6 with an HDMI box and then have it sent wirelessly. Is that allowed? Wireless
Yeah.
transmission?
Sure. Yep. Yeah, you can do that.
And
But
the
you-
question was, Evan? What was the
Can you use Cat 6 to run to an HMI box and send it wirelessly? I mean, there you're getting into like real technical stuff that, I mean, some people might not
But you
understand.
have it listed in, wait, so is it safety on the sense of wireless can be picked up? Or is it safety on the sense that it has to be wired?
It doesn't have to be wired.
So
It doesn't have to be wired, but if you're running it to HDMI, then you're getting one image
yeah, true.
of whatever, sending it to somewhere else for another monitor. You're not going to the DVR. It's not going to go from HDMI, from that
I'm just making sure
camera.
there's no regulations against
No,
that.
no. So you'll also see where it says, and you got to be careful about this when security companies come out to install your stuff. So you might want to take a note of this. They have to use rated in-wall cable. Okay, it has to be designated as plumbed cable. Okay, and the other thing is you don't want to use what's called copper clad cable. Okay, it'll be significantly cheaper. It's also significantly crappier. I'm going to be honest with you. Okay, don't use copper clad. Use pure copper. Okay, because you'll lose transmission. You'll lose your cameras half the time. Okay, so now a lot of people prefer going to IT because IT is so high speed now. You know, everything's IT, everything's plug and play, blah blah blah. So a lot of people think that they have to go with this IT system. If you're doing a smaller grow, smaller processing plant, you don't necessarily have to go IT. You can go coax, okay, because coax now supports up to 5 megapixels. Okay, so you don't, and it's probably about half the price. Now they're starting to level out a little bit. You can have thicker cable. Now you can't go above a certain megapixel right now in compression. So you can't go above 5 megapixel, generally speaking. Okay, in using coax. Okay, so that might be a problem if you want to run a 12 megapixel camera later, if you want to upgrade. Okay, just FYI. All right, does this make sense to you guys, kind of, sort of?
But you're starting to sound like my husband.
I'm sorry.
But I'm following, but I'm sure some people are like, oh, well, yeah.
I understand.
So Evan, just and for the time that we're looking at for the time, maybe instead of getting so far into the details, we can talk more about what the application's going to require from a security standpoint.
So you can't have any blind spots. 360 degrees are a good solution in a room. Be aware that cheap cameras are lowballing pricing from contractors. DIY can be a serious issue. Don't lowball security. Okay, it should be high on your priority list. Access control systems. They have to monitor all doors going in and out of the security area. Okay, so both ways. Both ways have to present a badge. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? You can't just have a badge in and a push button out. There's got to be badge in, badge out. You have to keep access control for 2 years. Layered security is always a good idea. You've got a general admin area, you've got admin, and then you've got admin with security. So for instance, your general access control will be for all your personnel to the exterior of the building. Your admin might be to everywhere but the safe, and your admin with security may be to the safe and to the IT rooms. Does that make sense to you guys? So you can tier level your security. Okay? So some people will be allowed to some places, other people won't be allowed to others. Okay? Just bear in mind that you basically have to have an access control system. Well, you do. There's no way to get around it. Okay? In policy. So just some alarm system tips. Like I told you, you need to have 3 separate alarm systems. Must have panic alarms, at least 3 per facility. Every entry point must be protected. And again, alarm system should be a layered protection. So you've got exterior or perimeter alarm systems, right? So those would be doors and windows, okay? Then you have interior, so that would be motion detectors and glass breaks. Does that make sense? So if someone drops in through the roof, the perimeter alarm is not necessarily going to go off, okay? And this does happen, okay? If someone breaks the window out, it might not necessarily violate the contact on the window because it's a solid, let's say you have a solid window pane, okay? So you got to have a glass break system in there, okay? So that's all about one, you know, internal to one system, okay? But have layered security, not just access control. So it's, some people talk about security guards, so I'm going to go over this for a minute. Security is not required, okay? The only problem is if you put it in your security plan, then you got to have it, okay? So contract security, you don't have to worry about scheduling, payroll, liability, obviously, licensing, training, etc. If you're looking at hiring a security company, number one, stay away from the Rambos. Okay, definitely. Okay, if guys show up, and this has happened to us, okay, guys show up and they say that, you know, we went to go do a proposal at a place. And they said the previous security company there wanted to put guys on the roof with automatic weapons. Okay, you know that you got to kind of question, okay, because it's really vicarious liability. So be careful with that.
With a guy with a pit bull and a can of mace.
Yeah, not good either. Okay. In-house personnel do not need to meet specific state requirements, but this is going to be a serious issue. Think very seriously about hiring your friend to do security in your facility. Okay, I'm telling you. Hire someone from outside that's a professional. If you know a cop or you know a guy that runs a security company, that's a different story. But you know, be aware. All personnel are required to be badged. So even if they're a security guard and they have a Maryland security clearance card from the Maryland State Police, they have to have a badge from MMCC. Okay, it's important. They will find you.
Quick question. Does
Yes.
security have to be on the premise 24 hours a day?
No,
Can we hear that again, please?
you're not required to have it. You're not required to have it at all.
Can we state the
Evan,
question?
what was the question?
If security is required to be on the property 24 hours a day, you don't need security at all. It's not required. Highly recommended.
You know, very valuable product.
Yeah, having armed security, wouldn't that be
Kind of
like
stupid
where
to
your
leave it out
location
there.
is?
Well, that's one we go over.
Yeah, I mean, certain areas you're gonna need it.
Yeah. So armed versus unarmed. There's liability in both, right? Some cannabis industry people are very shy about having armed security. Okay. Some want armed security. It just depends on the facility and who your management is. Okay. Again, that comes back to where you're at. Okay. So we have a location in Baltimore that we provide armed security to. They need it. The day before we came out there, actually the day I was there to talk to people interior, because we also did their cameras and access control and everything. We did their consulting, supplied them with security personnel. But the day we came back, the day before we came out there, I came up there for a brief meeting, and they find a body behind the place. Okay, so yeah, a location is definitely, but understand that you're a soft target. Okay, so you've got three things that people want. Okay, or two things out of three things that people want: money and drugs. You don't have guns. Okay, you're not selling guns out here, but you've got money and drugs. Okay, so you are a soft target. Understand? The more deterrence you have, the better alarm systems you have, the better camera systems you have. Armed personnel is a very good deterrent. Now, if you get the wrong guy to carry a gun on your property, you got a problem, right? So if you're going to hire an outside security company, make sure the security company is licensed by the state of Maryland, is legit, that they give you a copy of their liability insurance with you as an additionally insured on it, okay? And that the guys that they are sending there are properly licensed. Okay, don't be afraid to ask for their handgun permits. They have a card that says handgun permit. Okay, and it's not HQL. It's not Maryland Handgun Qualification. It's a handgun permit. okay? If they say you're a guy with a gun without a handgun permit, you got serious issues. Trust me, because if MMC comes in there, you got an armed guy on the property without it, yes ma'am.
What did you say a few minutes ago about a badge from the MMCC?
So the MMC issues badges to all employees or contractors, okay? So understand, if anyone's on your property for any extended length of time, well, if anyone's on your property, period, they have to be monitored by an agent that has a badge. Yes, sir.
And that would include just a volunteer or a paid person
Yep.
or anyone. So even if someone is volunteering for you, you ain't paying them, they still have to be badged.
Everybody there's got to have a badge. Visitors that come in have to have a badge. Okay, remember I told you that sign-in system that we use? A lot of sign-in systems, you make a copy of your ID, it prints out a badge for them. Okay, you can technically handwrite it, but you know, everyone has to have some type of badge. If they're a visitor, they have to have a visitor badge, they have to be escorted. Okay, so your security guards will have badges issued to them by MMCC. Okay. Don't hire unprofessional people, obviously. Okay, and look, they're representatives of your business. I guarantee you, when people come into your business, the security guys that hold the door open and say hello to them, you're going to get a lot better reviews than the guy that's sitting there playing on his phone. I mean, I'm just telling you not for general license purposes, but in general. Don't carry guns without training. Okay. Don't carry a firearm off the property without a permit. Okay, in Maryland, you can be armed at your business without having a handgun permit, but you cannot leave your property with that gun on your head. Okay? You can only carry your firearm within the confines of the business establishment without a permit. Security guards have to have a permit. Okay? You as a business owner do not. But don't walk outside without your gun. Must be an authorized supervisor of a business. Undertrained personnel are frequently a reflection of your business to your customers, obviously. Your security manager should know how to operate all your security systems in case of an audit. When MMCC comes in there and says, hey, we want this, this, and this, okay, we want a copy of all your access control logs for this date, we want a copy of all your video, or I want you to play back video from this date and time, and your security manager is like, I don't know how to do that. Okay, that's a problem. That's going to be an issue. Don't utilize dogs unless you're doing, they're certified, okay? Just my recommendations. So, plan submission to MMCC. You must have an extensive security coverage, types of access control systems. This is going to your question. Must have 100% coverage of all areas containing cannabis. Should have complete coverage of the facility. Refer for your application for specifics on security requirements. And consider hiring a security contractor to complete the security portion of your application. Okay, so this is the kind of software that we use to put together applications for MMCC and do proposals. You notice that we've got a floor plan, we've got cameras that show coverage of where those areas are. You'll notice that there's little boxes that say AC on them. That stands for access control points. You'll notice that we have little boxes that say INT or AC or whatever. That stands for interior detection, okay, like a PIR, passive infrared, a motion detector, okay, from an alarm system, so on and so forth, okay. So they're going to want to see your plans. Yes, sir.
I have a question regarding this. So, at this stage, we're all pretty much hypothetical. We have an idea of what we want to do.
Sure.
Would this be like in our security plan? This is more like an addendum. This is what we have in mind, how we're going to lay it out. Now, when I go to rent a space finally, or if I get to that stage and that's not available anymore, obviously that will change. That's okay.
That's okay, but as long as you make a modification to your plan with the state.
Okay.
Yeah. And they have to approve it, of course.
Okay.
Okay. So, like Hal said, we went to a place that, we did a proposal for. They had I don't know who came up with this crazy plan, but they had miles of fencing, I mean literally around this place. And they said that they wanted a security camera there every 10 feet on the fence line, okay? And then floodlights every 10 feet on the fence line. You can imagine how much cabling you would need for something like this. I mean, it's just astronaut. We actually did the numbers. It was crazy. It was like, 100,000 feet of cabling. I mean, it was nuts. And not to mention the fact that these cameras have a 130-degree view angle. So you'd basically be looking at the same thing,
I guess
slightly different image.
I guess I should have clarified a little more. What I'm saying is that, like, in my mind, if I see something like this is what I have in mind. When we submit our application, we show the commission this is what we have in mind. We haven't signed any leases or made any financial commitments because we have no guarantees of being approved. So this
Welcome
is a
to licensing.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a hypothetical of what we envision.
Right.
Let's say we do get to stage 2. At that point, we would obviously seek out this space.
They understand.
But you could also realize too is you're going to buy a warehouse.
Right.
You can make that warehouse within reason, pretty much do whatever you want to do. It's an empty warehouse. You know your officers are going down here. You know where your cameras are going to be required. And with your application, you have something that looks very similar to this.
Okay.
Show them where everything's going to be, what cameras are where your access control is, and it has to be time, date, and stamped. So it's going in the grow room, who went in, what time they left, right? So it should. What am I thinking of? Well, it should pretty much resemble that. So
Right.
you can give them a scenario, but you can change it later, like Kevin was saying.
Okay. As long as it's not super drastic, like.
Right. You're not going to mail. Yeah, they're not going to mail. I mean, look, hey, doing away with a fence with cameras every 10 feet is pretty drastic change for your security plan when they allowed it. Because it was crazy.
Can I clarify something in response to your question? On the last application period, you didn't have to verify that you had space.
Right.
You do this one. This application, you have to show the intent, you have to have a proposed location on here. So you will be able to, you're gonna have to design your grow rooms, you're gonna have to design your security, you're gonna have to design your processing suite, all to this proposed property. I mean,
Right.
that's part of the expense of putting the application in. Now, let's say that when you get your pre-approval and you go to sign the rental agreement or sale agreement, that property is not available, I don't think that's going to pose a problem. As Evan said, you find your property, you get your plans again, but you have to submit and get it approved by the MMCC.
I guess my confusion was that, okay, I give you the specs on the floor plan, everything, what I'm
Right.
gonna do. I don't wanna have to be putting up money for something I'm not guaranteed to get. That's what, I didn't wanna, I wanted to know if we had to show intent.
Money that you are not guaranteed to get.
Yeah. No, I mean as far as leasing a place.
So let me clarify for her here.
Okay.
That's part of the application process.
Uh-huh.
Is you're gonna have to already, like you said before, this wasn't the case, this time it is. You have to go ahead and seek out, and you're gonna have to find a piece of property.
Right.
You're gonna have to go ahead and sign the lease and say, we're taking this place. And you can sign it with, you can work this out with the owner of the property, which you may get help from someone else that's a specialist in the market of that, which I'm not. I know a motion or two that looks for dispensaries, that's what they do. But you're gonna have to go ahead and have all of your lease and everything showing them. Now, at the end, if you don't get approved for this license, you can work it out with the owner that, hey, we're staying here contingent upon the fact we're approved.
Yeah.
If we're not approved, we're not held to the lease.
So you can do like contingent, you saying,
That's right.
this application.
Exactly.
That's right.
And when Mark gets up to talk about processing, he's going to tell you the amount of money that he spends holding a building for processing that he paid for and then didn't get the processing license. So this is all part of your application fee. Simply having $2,000 in the bank isn't going to cut it, I'm telling you, for this application. When you submit, you're going to have to show that you've approached and have done some work for zoning for this, okay? Because what happened the last time is people said, we have these properties, we have lease agreements. Some of them are still waiting for zoning approval for those properties, and then they had to go find other properties.
Was that zoning from the state?
You could go to
It's
the
zoning
city.
from your
Local
city, municipality, your municipality.
And they have a list of that at the county or city you're trying to get into. They have their zoning district, so you could go there and find out the zoning area that you're looking for. Then that's where you're going to find the property.
You have a question up here?
Unfortunately, a lot of y'all put
I can't hear you.
Hey, there's a lot of, and we're guilty of it as well, there's a lot of sidebar conversations going on. It's not helping the folks, we're divided into the front and the back of the room. So, okay, we want to make sure that we're giving everybody the opportunity to be heard. And we will we've extended this to, we will break at 3:25, but we're going to give them 20 minutes because there's a lot of topics coming up. So let's make sure we're addressing them to the front of the room. And at that point, are we back to you?
I think, ma'am, did you
There
have
was
a
a
question?
lady right here with a question.
Yeah, this is a general question, I guess, the commission, when I attended the information session, someone stated about once you, I think they said once you get the pre-approval, you have 1 year to erect.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
1 year to what?
So, the part of the process is if you get a pre-approval, remember what I said in the beginning, you do not get a license. This is not for a license, this is for a pre-approval. You have 1 year to get your facility either purchased or rented. You have 1 year to redo your security plans and get them approved by the MMCC. What they're trying to avoid this time around in the application process is what happened last time. They had 12 months to become licensed and operational, and you had over half of the growers that did not meet that deadline because they didn't have their building, they didn't have their zoning. And so everything that Evan and the chief are talking about here has to be in your application on a piece of property that you have made arrangements to have, and if you don't get the license,
Yeah.
so, and that's all. Evan, I'll give it back to you.
No problem. So just, just like we were talking about, you have to include this in your application. That's why it's always good to hire a security consulting firm that can put this together for you, can put your numbers together, so you know what you're dealing with in the event that you do get licensed. We do this kind of work all the time. So this is just an equipment license, just so you know. Okay, so you see all this equipment that we're installing. Each piece of equipment has to be labeled. You have to literally tell them exactly what you're going to install. So you'll notice here it says that there's access control, access control, access control, who makes it, what the stock number is of the item, or what the model number is of the item, where it's going, okay, what area it's assigned to. All this stuff has to be listed to them. Okay, so you have to have a complete composition of every piece of equipment that's going into your system. And you have to supply specifications for every piece of equipment. Okay, so you can't just go to I guess Radio Shack's out of business. You can't just go to Best Buy and buy the $130 camera system and throw it up. Okay, it doesn't work like that. It's not going to work. I'm telling you. Okay, try not to do DIY because you'll flunk your inspection and then you'll be set back a longer time. So let's just talk about estimated cost. So let's say you got a 50,000 square foot facility. Okay, that's approximately $4 a square foot for a larger footprint. So you're looking at paying about $200,000 for a security and surveillance system. Now it can go up to $500,000. I mean, it just depends on how secure you want this facility. Okay, but having said that, we did a facility about this size for about $140. Okay.
Is that a year?
No, that's the entire cost for installation.
It's hard to see. What's the size of the facility?
This 50,000 square foot, you're probably talking about $4 per square foot for security. Installation.
Is that a grow location?
That's a grow location. That's a dispensary.
Did I understand this is for installation only?
This is installation. It's not monitoring.
And with the installation, if you're with a reputable company, they should be there during your audit, and they will demonstrate everything, they'll make sure everything's there.
I'll get back in 1 second.
And, you know, so that should be your complete, you know, ballpark of everything you need and see you through your inspection.
Now understand that the more corners you have, the more angles you have, the more rooms you have. Okay, let's say you want to have 28 offices in there, and you want them all to have cameras in there. Okay, well obviously it's going to shoot your price up. Okay, so the more angles you have, the more cameras, so on and so forth. You know, it's a very ballparkish figure, but it's basically $200,000 divided by 50,000 square feet. That's how you come up with your square footage. Okay, for your system. So 1,000 square foot facility is about $72 a square foot for camera installation, because your system is going to cost you about $72,000 divided by 1,000. Because you need coverage in all areas of the
None of that, all the computers go with it. You still have to be time stamped, dated.
Yeah.
Who goes in the office, who goes out, all the access. So you're still buying the same stuff.
Exactly. It's just
The
on a smaller
expensive
scale.
stuff. The cameras aren't your most expensive part.
Right.
You're gonna have lesser cameras, but you still have to have all the other hardware that goes with it.
The battery backup that I was talking about is about $10,000 for that system. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so say hypothetically, I find a building. Would your company work with me just to get an idea on where everything would be?
We'll do everything.
Exactly what
Yeah,
I need?
yeah.
And then I
We do
pay
that.
you a fee?
Correct.
Is that how that works?
Yeah. You pay us a fee, we work up a plan that you can submit to MMCC. And this is, I'm not saying specifically my security company, but
Any
this is
reputable
what
security company.
any reputable company should do for you.
Use your free consultation.
So on the board, where you have estimated costs, is that, like where it says 720,000, for example, might that be like all in, like is that just security costs you're saying?
That's security.
Okay.
Yeah, that's security. Yes, ma'am.
Specifically, when you're talking about security, that's the camera system, but is that also including the entrance, the perimeter?
That's everything.
That's everything.
Evan,
So
repeat that
access
question,
To go through
fees,
your inspection.
the access.
That's access control.
That's your off-site storage of data. That's everything.
Yeah. That's, listen guys, listen.
Okay, wait, we can't hear you guys back here, so Evan, can you repeat all those questions?
Yeah. So, this lady just asked if that's an all-in. We had a couple questions. Sorry, you asked the same question. If that's all-in, that's all-in for security. So understand that you're talking about a camera system. Okay, you're talking about the alarm systems, 3 alarm systems. Okay, you're talking about your access control system and your visitor control system. Basically, the thing that prints out badges and stuff like that. Okay. Off-site storage and installation. Okay, so that's relatively reasonable. Now there are companies out there that will go through the roof with a quote like this. They'll say, okay, it's $500,000. Okay, so that's why you got to get quotes, obviously. Now the thing I'm going to tell you is, remember, you have to balance your expenditures with meeting inspection. Okay, so don't go with the lowest company that's going to give you a bid if they're going to give you a junk installation. Okay, don't go with a very high-end company, and you know they might overdo it. You understand what I'm saying?
Any reputable company should guarantee you that they'll be there during your inspection and will pass the inspection. If not, they will correct it and no cost to you.
We've passed every inspection we've installed, by the way. Yes,
In
guys.
terms of cost, where do you all fall in that spectrum?
This is basically where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah, this is basically where we're at. But now we've had companies come in behind us, go 3 times what we charge now, and we've had companies come in $40,000 under us. Okay. Again, it's just like anything in the security industry is you get what you pay for. Okay, believe me when I tell you this. Okay, security guards. Okay, we do security personnel also. You get what you pay for. We're not the cheapest, but you're not going to get the guy with the untucked shirt, with the guy with stains down the front of his stuff. We don't do that. We hire only military and prior police. Okay, So the bottom line is that you get what you pay for in the industry. Trust me when I tell you this. Don't lowball it. I think we're gonna have questions at the end too. What can I do?
That the security company must be in Maryland, meaning in an
No,
outside-
you can hire anyone off-site. You can hire anyone from
outside of,
anywhere.
Maryland
Now, can you
department
repeat the
store.
question?
Yeah, does a security company have to be in Maryland? No, they can be a security company from anywhere, but they have to be licensed in Maryland.
Oh, licensed in Maryland.
Right. So in other words, bear in mind, your security guards have to be licensed in Maryland, your alarm installation company has to be licensed in Maryland. Okay, yes ma'am?
Security companies like yours, is it like construction that you also have to be bonded, insured,
Yes.
anything like that? So those are questions you want to ask of your...
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And understand, when you're building your facility, a good security company will work with your builder. Okay, they'll get in there at exactly the right time so that they can save you money. Okay, so they're gonna get in there before you get all your walls up. Okay, so that they can run wire through the walls. They should. Okay? You know, now some people hire us after they get, you know, it just is what it is, but you should get up with your builder. Because your builder may not know the security regulations in Maryland. Okay, he may not know what to put in the walls to harden them. He may not know about the steel cage stuff, and we consult on that for that. All right, any other questions? I think we're having like a dais at the end, is that correct, basically?
We are, and so I'd like to wrap this up and give everybody time to take like a short break before we go on to Mark. And then Evan and Chief will be here, and we're gonna have a panel where we can continue these types of questions.
Thank you all very much.
Here's our numbers on the board. Give us a call if you have any questions.